My worst fear is waking up at 40 and realizing I've wasted this life. I've wasted this life being scared. I've wasted this life hiding from the world. So wake up, babe. Grab your notebook or your journal or your phone and really think about what you want, because the world is your king oyster. Your 20s are full of heartbreak, laughter, tears, fears, all at the same time. They are complicated because you are a complex human being. There's so much freedom in choosing where you want your life to lead and forgetting about what everyone else thinks. If this video feels overwhelming or like you want to turn it off because it's uncomfortable, don't. Stay here with me. We are going to talk about why your 20s suck, but likely not as much as you think that they do. I vividly remember turning 20, not because it was some specific or special day necessarily. I'm not even sure I had a party for it, but because I knew that something was changing. My relationship with my parents was changing. I felt like an adult, but they still looked at me like I was little. And I was no longer just focused on dating or school or friendships, and instead had these bigger responsibilities looming ahead of me, like working part-time throughout all of university or reworking my CV or trying to figure out where I was going to intern that summer. And my friendships were changing too. We weren't talking about the same subjects, and instead our conversation shifted to talk about what we were doing with our future. Who the hell at 20 knows exactly what you want to do with your future? Instead of actually being an adult, it feels like most of the time when you're 20, you're kind of cosplaying as an adult. But that can be a really amazing thing that I think so many of us forget about, because it gives you that time and that space to make mistakes, to play, to have fun. But it also leaves room for a whole hell of a lot of confusion, because it feels like everybody has it all figured out. Spoiler alert, they absolutely have no idea what they're doing. It felt like everyone knew what they wanted to do after graduation, even years ahead of time. They had an in at a hotel chain or a hedge fund or a tech company, and I didn't. I felt like I was the only one who had no idea and was just trying to keep the pieces together. So the spring before graduation, I started to apply to as many jobs as possible, not even thinking about what I really wanted to do, and instead just throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what stuck. Eventually, I ended up joining a job at a tech company and hating it. No wonder, because I hadn't put that time, energy, and effort into really thinking about what I wanted to do next. That being said, that mistake had actually opened up a huge number of doors for me, and my career wouldn't be anything without that initial decision. No matter where you are in your career, in your life, if you're 20, if you're 29, you are in the right place. You made those decisions with the information that you had on hand at the time. That's the best that any of us can do. And so despite the intro, I actually loved my 20s. As I'm about to turn 30 in July, I'm starting to take stock. I'm 29 and I've gone through my 20s, and I'm here to say that they taught me a whole hell of a lot. Were they full of heartbreak and confusion? Yes. Were they full of sadness and laughter and tears, sometimes all at the same time? Absolutely. So no matter what age you are right now, I hope that some of these points resonate with you. I wanted to make this video as a tribute to my 20s, but also help you understand what exactly I learned from 20 all the way through 29 and what I'm looking forward to as I move into my 30s. I hope it provides you comfort in the same way that it's done for me. Because as a highly anxious, chronically ill, people pleaser, perfectionist, there were so many times throughout my 20s where I second guessed myself, where I started to kick myself, where I started to think about all the mistakes that I had made instead of thinking about it in relation to everything that I had learned. Because mistakes are a part of life and you're gonna keep making them. So back to the main point, your 20s are fucking confusing. It's when you can go out until 2 a.m. and still wake up for that 7 a.m. cycle class. Now that I'm 29, those days are long gone, but I kind of miss them. Not in the I wish I could actually go back to them kind of way, but in the nostalgic kind of way. There's no way in hell I'm swapping my 1200 thread count sheets for a night out at a sweaty club, but more power to you if that's still your thing. Your 20s are especially hard because you just keep making mistakes, but that's kind of the point of your 20s is you're supposed to just keep making mistake after mistake after mistake. You'll forget to do laundry. You'll forget to go grocery shopping. You will forget to pay that bill that you should have fucking put on auto pay months ago, but just had totally forgotten about it. That is okay. With every single misstep, you are going to teach yourself that you are resilient and that you can support yourself. Your self-confidence can actually continue to grow even when you make mistakes. I'm going to say that again because I think that's really important. Your self-confidence can continue to grow even when you make mistakes. It actually makes you so human. It means that you are doing the right thing. You are trying new things. You are pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. And if the people that you spend time around aren't willing to do that, then maybe you're not with your people, because friendships are hard. And you're seeing everyone on social media have these big, beautiful, and amazing lives, pretending like they know exactly what they're doing, which I'm here to tell you they absolutely do not. That West Elm couch or all of those Lululemons, those things are fake. Maybe they were gifted. by one of their parents. Maybe they have a swanky fun job but have zero saving. You have no idea what's happening in someone else's life. Try and remain focused on what you're doing, what your goals are, where you want to go, instead of focusing on what everyone else is doing. If you can't find friends who are going to go out with you in the way that you want to go out, or you feel like every single time you go out to dinner, you're just dropping all this money that you feel wildly uncomfortable with, don't go out with those friends anymore. Talk to those friends. Start to have more adult relationships. Your 20s are a time where adult relationships and adult boundaries are so incredibly necessary, but they're really hard and they can be awkward at first. You have to start tiptoeing around them, start having those chats. You'll find out which ones are really meant to be in your circle and which ones are not. That's another big thing that changes throughout your 20s. Your friends end up getting really busy with their own jobs in their own lives. You're so used to spending all of your time with them in university, getting all up in each other's business, telling all of the details of your life, and then all of a sudden you graduate and you end up in this place where you're just not sharing as much as you once were, or you're making new friends. You're all going off to different jobs. Sometimes you're going off all around the world. It's a natural part of life. You start to figure out what you really want to be sharing. Which friends are the ones that you really want to hold close? Because drinks and dinners are going to need to be scheduled. You're only going to have so much time, and it doesn't make sense to continue to surround yourself with people that just suck your energy. You need to surround yourself with people who are going to teach you, people that you can learn from, people that you can teach, people that make you feel really, really good. You're not meant to be friends with everyone. If you are sitting there and every single time you go out with somebody, you feel like your energy is drained, they're not into the same things that you're into, you can never actually schedule time with them, maybe you're not in the right friendship relationship. There are so many friendship breakups that happen over the course of your 20s, and I could do an entire other episode on this. Let me know if you're interested in friendship breakups or friendship boundaries or just friendships in general, especially as a high achieving, highly anxious adult woman. Let me know, because I have gone through all of those different steps before, and trust me, it's not easy. It's not easy, but you can do it. And jobs, you will change jobs a ton, and that is a good thing. I don't know one of my friends who's in their 30s who hasn't changed jobs at least twice, because you're not meant to know exactly what you want to do when you graduate. You're supposed to go, you're supposed to test, you're supposed to experiment. If I were in the same job as I was when I graduated, for me personally, that wouldn't have been the right decision. It's not what inspired me. I've worked in the tech industry pretty much my entire career. And people oftentimes think that, oh, you work in tech, so you found your place, you found your niche. And that is far beyond the truth. Anyone in tech will tell you there are all of these different micro verticals, almost sub verticals that you can choose to go and join. And each one of those companies is going to operate in a very different way. Maybe you want to go and join a startup. Those companies are going to be very, very small. You are going to need to wear a huge number of hats. I actually think that is a great type of company for you to join when you're in your younger 20s, because it teaches you resilience, it teaches you autonomy, it teaches you to make decisions. But there are also benefits from you going to join a big tech company that has the systems and the structures in place, a place for you to go and learn with a ton of cushions around you, because you're not going to go and drop the ball if you end up making a mistake. And so just because you go and join tech, just because you have a great salary, doesn't necessarily mean that that is the only place where you are going to be able to go and do this. There's another misconception I had when I was in my early 20s is I only thought there was one place to work, and that was the company that I was working at. Because our brains teach us that anything outside of what we're currently doing is unsafe. Even if the job is making us cry every single night, even if we really dislike our boss, even if you have all of these negative points, your brain is going to continue to remind you, ooh, but you know what to expect from here. If you are not inspired by your job, if you are not earning, learning, or growing. Now, earning can mean a huge number of things for different people. Just earning a salary at some points in your career is going to be enough. Like, you don't need to be earning a huge amount even, you just need to be making a paycheck. I understand that and I respect that. But if you're not doing one of those three things, then it might be time for you to reevaluate and take a look at whether or not you're going to be able to move up the ranks, right? Or switch jobs. But one of the hard parts with every single one of those job switches is you're going to think to yourself every single time, I kid you not, did I negotiate enough? Did I handle those job interviews right? You're going to have 1,000 different questions swirling through your head. It's never going to feel 100% comfortable. That's okay. Like, as somebody who has gone through, I switched jobs 4 or 5 times, I believe, and gone through countless numbers of interviews. It's never going to go perfectly. They're not looking for the perfect candidate. And if they are, that's not necessarily the job you want to go and join. But you want to practice as much as possible, because interviews are hard. Interviews are awkward. Negotiating is hard. Negotiating is awkward. But you want to do it every single time so that you get better. And another complication, who you go to for advice. That's going to totally change because you're likely used to going to your parents for advice, which is great, but they're not in their early career in the market that we are in right now. In the requirements for negotiating, the requirements for how you build your CV is very different. When I went into one of my first interviews, I asked my dad for advice, and his main focus was on my nose ring. It wasn't on the substance that I was bringing to the table. It wasn't on my CV. It wasn't on how I worded my interview questions or how I pitched myself. Instead, his main focus was, don't wear that nose ring. Don't wear that nose ring because it's going to be an immediate non-starter for the company that you're joining. I was working in tech, and my manager that I ended up working with, because spoiler alert, I got the job, had blue hair and wore beanies constantly. I made a video on what I've seen people wear in tech, and it's this incredible ecosystem where you can literally wear whatever you want. People are more focused on your mind than they are your body, which is an amazing place to be. Oftentimes, your parents may not totally understand that, so take it all with a grain of salt. Just because someone has been through it before doesn't mean they know the exact way that you're supposed to go through it. Listen to advice, absorb advice, but make the decision based on what you know in your gut. Learn to trust that gut. Gather all the information, learn to ask the right questions, but trust your gut. Another thing that I wish I knew before I was in my 20s is you'll go through a quarter life crisis. All of my friends and I have gone through quarter life crises. Crises? That's the word I'm looking for. You have all this pressure to make decisions. You have all this pressure to be this perfect human being, and you're just never going to get there because perfection is this fake goal. 25 is when I burnt out for the very first time. I realized that I had spent my very early 20s doing all of the grunt work. And some of that's going to be necessary as you're in your early career. But I had done all the grunt work. I had set zero boundaries. I was a chronic people pleaser. And so I burnt myself out. I drove myself into the ground. And not only did I drive myself into the ground, I drove myself into the ground in jobs that weren't fulfilling for me. No one had ever taught me that I could ask the question, do I actually want to do this? Or better yet, there's no way in hell that I'm doing that. Somewhere along the way, I had internalized and I had learned that the only way you can be successful is if you keep your head down, you do the work, and that work will get rewarded and recognized. It's really hard to get recognized when you don't set boundaries, when you don't think outside of the box, when you don't step outside and say, is this what I really want to do? Then you're putting success in somebody else's terms instead of putting it on your own terms. So when I reached 25, I had a major midlife crisis, except I was 25, and so it was my quarter life. I moved countries, I got divorced, and I quit my job with no new prospects. And while you definitely don't need to shake the jar in the way that I did, I'm so grateful for the life that I created because it was on my terms. I said earlier on in this video, your 20s are full of heartbreak, laughter, tears, fears, all at the same time. They are complicated because you are a complex human being. There's so much freedom in choosing where you want your life to lead and forgetting about what everyone else thinks. I'd worked in tech for 8 years before I quit, and I was exhausted. I was exhausted by the politics. I was exhausted by the long hours. I was exhausted by my own inability to set boundaries. When I quit, the weight that lifted off my shoulders, I think I'm still recovering from the burnout that I experienced. And you don't need to go and quit your job to change your life in the way that I did. You just need to learn that you're allowed to develop, to create, to own your life in the way that you want to. So the last point that I'm going to bring up here is the fact that when you are in your 20s, you finally have adult money, but have no idea how to actually spend it. Because you're drowning in all of these new terms like high yield savings account, 401k, IRA. Should you be investing in stocks? Should you be investing in crypto? Should you be putting your money into a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA? And no one teaches you this in school. You'll constantly wonder if you're making enough because oftentimes you're not having these conversations with your friends. So you think when you first get out of university that you're making a great amount of money, and then you realize what you can actually spend that money on and how far it'll actually go. And then you come to the realization that maybe this isn't as much money as I initially thought it would. Then you'll go out with your friends for the first time to a bar or to dinner, and they will start splashing out on things. You go, wait a second, that was way too much for me to be able to afford. And then you'll question, are they making more than me? And once that happens, the dread starts to set in. Remember what I said earlier on though, you don't know what's going on behind someone's closed door. You have no idea what kind of savings they have, how they grew up, if their parents have money. So remember that. Keep your eye on your own lane. You will get there. Set the goal. Set the goal to be able to go and afford those things that you see your friends buying if you feel like you can't afford them. But another thing that I learned is have the conversation about money. One of the most freeing conversations that I had was when my best friend and I sat down. We were working in the same position at the time. We looked at each other and we said, how much money do you make? There was like 3 seconds of awkwardness. There was 3 seconds where we were like, are we really doing this? I can't tell you the number of times that I've realized, especially as a hiring manager, that women undersell themselves every chance that they can. We think, oh, if I ask for less, there's a higher chance that I will get what I want. That is not true. The company has the budget. They're always going to try to pay you less, but you are allowed to ask for what you are worth because it helps a huge amount with your self-confidence when you do that. Imagine if you realized you were making half of what your friends were making. You're making half of what other people in your same position were making, what other people in your same position who had less experience than you were making. These conversations only serve to help us in the long run because it means that we can come armed with the right information at the right time. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. And I really want to ingrain this because it was one of the most difficult things that I have learned how to do, especially around money, learning about money, researching it, understanding it. It is one of the best things that you could do in your early 20s to set yourself up for success. But if you're sitting there and all of a sudden you start asking your friends for how much money they make and they start throwing out huge numbers where you're just like, are you serious? If they're like, I make a 250 base with a 20% bonus and over $200,000 in equity and they're working for a big tech company, that is okay. You can get there if that's what you want to do. If you haven't had that promotion yet, if you are still working at a small startup, it is okay. You will get there. Ask your friends what they're making, especially the friends that are working in similar roles to you. Different industries operate differently, different companies operate differently. Understand what is achievable and then make the decision as to whether or not you want to be there and whether or not you want to move to a company that has a different salary package that is more in line with your expectations and goals. And if you're watching this and thinking, oh my God, I am in the wrong job, I'm not making that much money, congratulations. You are one step closer to building the life that you want to live and that you deserve to live. So with all that said, my answer is no. Your 20s don't suck. Your 20s might suck sometimes, but not as much as you think they do because they have a huge amount to teach you. Are they hard? Yes. Are they uncomfortable? Fuck yeah. Awkward? Absolutely. My worst fear is waking up at 40 and realizing I've wasted this life. I've wasted this life being scared. I've wasted this life hiding from the world. So wake up, babe. Grab your notebook or your journal or your phone and really think about what you want. Sit down, write it down, think about it. Because the world is your freaking oyster. And if you want to hear about how I balance my life and calm my anxiety, make sure you tune into my video, How I Unfucked My Life. Thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions about anything we talked about in the show, make sure you check out the show notes. This has been another episode of Organized Chaos. Thanks so much for joining, and I will see you next time. Thanks, everyone.